Well, I think that it's probably going to be more red meat for his base. And my sense is, given the Supreme Court decision on tariffs, that he will be coming out swinging against Democrats. I think there'll probably be more attacks in this State of the Union than typically is the case. So I expect it to be a bit of a circus, and who knows where it's going to go, depending on how far off script President Trump goes. But that I think will be the interesting thing to watch with this one.
The 10% replacement tariff he had announced on Friday, up to 15%, that is the top limit he can charge under the different tariff statute that Trump is now claiming. Despite the 150-day limit on such tariffs under this statute, Trump claims he does not have to go to Congress to then get it extended. In another social media post earlier today, Trump threatened to hike tariffs even further on any country that backs away from earlier trade deals with the U.S. He warned them not to, quote, play games.
In it, it showed that when it comes to inflation, just 32% say that they approve. He has a 34% approval rating on his handling of tariffs on imported goods, a 40% on immigration, and 41% on the economy. Now, a few things specifically to look out for here. It is likely that we will still be experiencing a partial government shutdown when this speech takes place. It is impacting the Department of Homeland Security specifically. Democrats have been withholding their votes on a funding bill as they want to see reforms when it comes to immigration and customs enforcement.
And post polling showing his approval rating at 39%. That leaves 60% of Americans disapproving of the president's job performance. The last time Trump's overall disapproval rating was at that number was shortly after the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol in the end of his first term. Let's bring in.
Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen. In a few moments.
I don't think that he's going to spend too much time on his specific agenda other than saying we're going to continue what we're doing. I think he's going to claim victory in a lot of places on foreign policy, because that is the one area where the president has the advantage, is on foreign policy. And that he may think it helps Republicans in the midterm elections. I don't know if it's going to be enough to overcome that. But foreign policy is probably the one area where he can demonstrate some wins and claim that there's going to be more coming. And the people out of power just don't have that opportunity to take that power from the president. Well, the one thing I think that's really the major concern and the overarching concern, which is causing, I think, a bit of the angst that we see in the United States, is the cost of living has been rising for quite some time now, and it hasn't abated yet. Most people aren't going to watch this. They certainly won't watch it all the way through, but people will learn about it from the press and where they get their news and information. So in order to judge the impact of this or what direction it might be pushing things, it's really critical to watch and just read those two different news channels, broad channels coming in to Republicans and Democrats to see how they're interpreting it, and what direction their parties or their blocs are going to take after this. So I think it's kind of the setup. It's teeing things up for the summertime election season, but you're going to hear completely different messages about who won and who lost and what was good and what was bad about the State of the Union. The Epstein affair is certainly something that Democrats believe they have a winning issue on, because you can see that it was Republicans who were pushing for it, and now Republicans are kind of backing off on it. At least the Department of Justice seems to be backing off on it. So that's something that Democrats are seeing as an opening or a wedge between different groups of Republicans, and they're going to continue to push that. And that's why I think they're bringing guests to the State of the Union, because what that does is highlights things. It's kind of it's a show, a demonstration or something. But what will happen is the cameras will cover that, and you'll see those clips over and over and on television, and you'll see it written about in the papers for the coming weeks going forward. Well, it's an opportunity for him to heal wounds within his party. This is going to be challenging because I think that the Supreme Court decision this week, I can see Trump going after the members of the Supreme Court who are in the room there. So I could see that not being helpful. But it will work. It'll give his party talking points that are going to be able to be used against Democrats in both elections and on media.
The Supreme Court justices who ruled against this the policy, striking it down, are they still invited to your State of the Union next week? And will you speak with them?
They are invited, barely. 3 are happily invited. No, they're barely invited. Honestly, I couldn't care less if they come. Okay.
The things that I would look for to really kind of make the news would be any really dramatically new proposals, or maybe an announcement that the troops are going into Iran while he's speaking, something like that. That obviously would make the news. But I think other than that, I think it's going to be gas. What does he say that is really something that isn't anticipated and causes people to step back and ask what's the change, what's going on here? That's the second thing I look for. The third thing I look for, which is kind of less important, but I think that Democrats are, because it's an election year and we're getting people lined up for the presidency in 2028 within the Democratic Party, I would not be surprised to see kind of on the floor demonstrations by Democratic members of Congress. And I think you're going to see a lot of cameras trained on those people to see what the reactions they're going to have for Trump. Those sorts of things I think are going to matter. If I'm advising the Democrats, I'd probably say, keep things calm. Let if your enemy's defeating himself, stay out of the way, sort of a thing. Because I think that Trump is just going to have a hard time. I think he's going to have a hard time maintaining a calm demeanor during the speech. It's like a NASCAR race. You wait for the crashes, and those are the things that you show on TV for the next 2 weeks. So I think that there's a little bit of that sort of an effect going on with this among the Republicans. They're concerned that Trump really might go out on a limb on something. But it's probably more critical for the president to do a good job in the State of the Union address, because in midterm elections, the president's party almost always loses seats. And the House of Representatives is razor thin already. If the Republicans lose 5-10 seats, which is well in range, they could even lose 20 seats this year. That means that President Trump's last 2 years in office are really going to be hamstrung by congressional resistance that he hasn't faced these first 2 years.
The decision by the Supreme Court has put the EU-US agreement into question, because what the Europeans negotiated in this agreement are basically that their tariff, which was partially based on this emergency legislation, would be lowered to a maximum of 15%. This also included parts of tariffs that are not subject to the Supreme Court decision, but also that are not affected by this 15% now. So there are these parts still there. It still applies there. But for the other parts now, there's a new tariff that is potentially somewhat higher than what was negotiated in the EU-US agreement. It is unclear what will be the rules under this new tariff, so this has to be calculated good by good. It is not unlikely that there will be goods where the tariff rate will be somewhat higher than under the agreement of last year. At the same time, it is not clear if these tariffs will stand for very long anyway. So right now there's a lot of uncertainty over this. I think status quo for European companies is probably comparable to what we had before, but with a big grain of uncertainty in there that you do not know what will apply in a couple of months. Senior voices in the European Parliament have already signaled that they will postpone the ratification of the deal that was struck last year, because they don't know what would be the terms of the deal now. And here for the European side to deliver their side, while they not know if the United States is able to deliver on their side of the deal, means that there's right now not much of a basis for this ratification. At the same time, the European Commission is pushing for basically the US upholding their side of the deal, meaning no tariffs above 15%. And it is unclear if this will be the case under the current rules that are now put forward by the White House. The big question mark then is also what the United States will do in a couple of months, because they clearly want to have some higher tariffs than they had before, but they will have to do this on a different legal basis, which could mean that they base their new tariffs on complaints about European tech regulation or European tax rules, which would be much more attached to European sovereignty and therefore likely receive much more pushback. So the EU-US deal is really into question right now. The Supreme Court has decided that the tariffs were illegal, but it has not decided yet whether they have to be reimbursed by the US Treasury or not. This was relegated to lower courts, but we can expect them to decide so. This does not necessarily have huge implication for European businesses, because the importers pay the taxes and therefore they will also be the ones that will be potentially rebated. To the extent that European companies act as importers in the United States, they might claim reimbursements, but what they will certainly not be reclaiming is a loss of revenue that they got from just the rise in prices they had to do and what that meant for loss of customers.
播报新闻是我的日常，必须时刻保持妆容和皮肤的最佳状态。当来到人生中最重要的时刻，也是 KS 逆时奇迹帮助我轻松驾驭，闪闪发光。KS 逆时奇迹活肤露全效精华、精华霜，多达5种 EGF，6大冻龄关键成分，保湿效果让我非常满意，小细纹也不再困扰我。我就是我自己的最佳女主角。KS 让我从容自信，光彩动人。我是我人生中的大女主，我的最爱我做主。KS 逆时奇迹系列热卖中，下单请上快点购，透过中天新闻网 App 下单立减50，或输入 CTI 推荐码有额外折扣。